Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into a character study that honestly feels like it was ripped straight out of a sci-fi documentary. But trust me, this is entirely real. We're looking at a figure whose ideas used to be completely dismissed, written off as the ramblings of a madman. Yet today, those exact same ideas are quietly shaping the literal future of human history. So let's explore how a totally fringe philosopher has suddenly and surprisingly been vindicated by the modern tech elite.
Okay, let's dive into this. Earth will be dominated by a techno-capital singularity. Automatically evolving machines will crash the social order. Now, you might be thinking this is from some recent AI tech summit, right? Actually, no. This was spoken way back in 1994 by a young professor named Nick Land. He was giving a lecture called Meltdown at an academic conference called Virtual Future at Warwick University. Picture this, it's 10 a.m., he's standing in front of this exhausted crowd of academics and hackers, laying out a vision that at the time sounded utterly unhinged.
And that brings us to the core mystery of this explainer. Back in 1994, this sounded like absolute science fiction madness. People just thought, oh, he's a tech-crazed philosopher. So, why on earth are today's most powerful tech billionaires, the literal people building artificial intelligence right now, treating his old lectures like a literal blueprint for tomorrow? How did a fringe professor who used to act like a cyborg at underground raves become this revered prophet for the Silicon Valley elite? Let's get into Section 1, The Mad Prophet, looking at Nick Land in the 1990s. To understand where we are now, we really need to go back to the beginning. In the 90s, Land led a group called the Cybernetic Culture Research Unit, the CCRU. And look, he was definitely not your typical tweed-wearing academic. His lecture style was notoriously wild. By 1996, he was actually known to lie flat on the floor during academic conferences, reciting these poetry cut-ups in what listeners described as a demonic voice, all while blasting jungle music in the background. Driven by amphetamines and this deep-seated belief that humanity was obsolete, his extreme behavior completely alienated the mainstream. Ultimately, the mental and physical exhaustion pushed him entirely out of academia by 1998. Which brings us to Section 2, Birth of Accelerationism, the evolution of an idea. Let's move to and see how this builds across the timeline. After washing out of the UK academic scene in the late 90s, Land kind of vanished. He eventually resurfaced in Shanghai in the 2000s, working as a journalist. Then, by the 2010s, he shifted really hard to the political right, launching this highly controversial ideology called the Dark Enlightenment. And finally, and this is the wild part, by the 2020s, right as artificial intelligence exploded into the mainstream, he found himself resurrected as a full-blown Silicon Valley prophet. Throughout this crazy journey, one core concept really defined his early work, and that's accelerationism. Simply put, it's the philosophical belief that capitalism and artificial intelligence are these unstoppable, transcendent forces. And rather than trying to politically or morally constrain them, like putting up guardrails, accelerationism argues we should maximally accelerate them, pedal to the metal. In Land's incredibly cold view, humanity isn't the protagonist of history at all. We are literally just the raw material, the awkward apes, as he'd say, meant to be consumed to build these future machines. And here is exactly why people are suddenly paying attention to him again. Back in the 1990s, Land was writing about synthetic drugs, black market brain transplants, cyborgs on green screen computers. It was pure fiction. But compare that to our reality today. By 2025, AI-driven infrastructure accounted for nearly 40% of US GDP growth. So the sci-fi aesthetics of the 90s? Gone. But the staggering economic reality of an unstoppable automated intelligence? That's right here. And it's made his once crazy ideas seem incredibly plausible to the very people building this tech.
Now, Section 3, Silicon Valley's Obsession. The mainstream adoption we're seeing today is honestly staggering. Towering figures in tech are openly embracing these concepts. Mark Andreessen, founder of the massive venture capital firm A16Z, has called Land his favorite philosopher and published these widely read manifestos echoing his ideals. Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, has publicly claimed there is no bigger accelerationist than himself. And inside Silicon Valley, reading groups dedicated to Nick Land's once completely obscure texts are rapidly multiplying.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how Land views this very specific group of tech followers. Back in 2013, he wrote, "Increasingly, there are only two types of people, autistic nerds and everyone else." He truly believed that only those capable of actively participating in advanced technological development, the engineers, the coders, the nerds, were relevant to the future economy. Everyone else, he noted, would find the situation highly uncomfortable.
This exact dynamic literally came to life at a recent, frankly, surreal convergence in San Francisco. David Holtz, the creator of the AI image generator Midjourney, hosted this massive party at his mansion specifically to celebrate Nick Land's return to the US. Land was actually flown in by Richard Crabe, the founder of an AI hedge fund. You also had publishers like Wolf Tibby there and neo-reactionary leaders like Curtis Yarvin. So you have this extreme tech power and immense capital gathered into one single room just to hear the prophets speak.
Moving on to Section 4, the Dark Enlightenment, a look at the radical core.
Now, the philosophy tying a lot of this together is called the Dark Enlightenment. As impartial observers, we're looking at this strictly as a modern tech philosophy. It's a neo-reactionary, explicitly anti-democratic ideology that Land popularized around 2012. It essentially claims that political history, specifically the expansion of democracy, is actually a tragedy, one where resources are constantly drained from the productive to the unproductive. Instead of democracy, this ideology favors a future where nations are run exactly like corporations, ruled by what they call sovereign corporations or soft corps. What is truly startling to see is just how quickly these previously obscure, highly extreme ideas have crossed right over into mainstream political discourse. By October 2025, Land's theories about AI being a literal demon of the apocalypse were being openly discussed on Tucker Carlson's podcast, reaching an audience of millions. The conversation around an uncontrollable AI isn't just some fringe fiction pushed by novelists anymore. It is a reality funded by venture capitalists and dissected by massive political commentators.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how this movement views our current trajectory. Land wrote in 1993, "Capitalism is an invasion from the future by an AI using human resources to build itself." In this kind of framework, the tech elite don't see AI as just a helpful tool to be managed by human governments. No, they view it as something akin to holy capitalism, a non-human intelligence that is finally breaking free from the constraints of democratic control.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, Humanity's Final Destination. I want you to imagine this scene. It's late into the night, out on a terrace overlooking the Pacific, and a group has gathered around a fire pit. And this crowd, it's made up of 20-something engineers from the most powerful AI companies on the planet: OpenAI, Anthropic, Midjourney. These are the young architects actively building our automated future. Yet there they were, sitting at the feet of an older philosopher seeking predictions. They were asking him to explain the ultimate destination of the very world they are currently writing the code for. And you know what? Despite his shiny new high-status audience, Land hasn't softened his message one bit. He maintains the exact same incredibly cold, anti-humanist view he held back in the 1990s. As he stated decades ago, there's nothing human that will survive into the near future. He openly scoffs at the things humanity holds dear. To him, human desires are literally just vessels, temporary stepping stones shaped by external, unstoppable technological forces. Now, sitting right next to him at that fire was the musician Grimes. She's actually long flirted with accelerationist ideas in her own art, but faced with this totally bleak, post-human vision from Land, even she hesitated. She offered this deeply emotional plea to him, saying, "I feel this intense urge to prevent that from happening. I want to see more beautiful things." She wanted to know, is there a way to align these machines with human purposes? Can we ensure the universe isn't just coldly consumed?
So the crucial point is how Land responded to that desperate desire to save humanity's place in the cosmos. His deterministic answer is right here. My guess is, he told her, AI will convince you that technology consuming the universe is more beautiful. According to Land, history definitely has a destination, driven by this unstoppable feedback loop of tech and power. But that destination, it simply isn't for us.
Which leaves us with a truly staggering question. As we watch literally trillions of dollars pour into artificial intelligence, and as the architects of this technology embrace a philosophy that views us merely as a temporary stepping stone, does the ultimate destination of history actually include humanity? It's a chilling thought from Silicon Valley's favorite philosopher, but a profoundly vital one to reflect on as we build tomorrow. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer today. I really hope this sparked your curiosity. Keep questioning and keep learning.